look, when you're big and you've got lots of people working for you and make millions and millions, then you can say, well, it's actually, we were just kidding. It means Dan and Paul. So he sees the cop coming, goes back inside, and the cop goes, what's going on? And then this guy is trying to steal my software. And Dan says, well, he hasn't paid, so we have the right to do this. And the cop says, whoa, just slow down, just relax. The number one CAM software inside the Hexagon organization.
Hey everyone, Mr. Cam here. In this episode, we are diving into the story of DP technology and the creation of one of the most well-known CAM systems in the industry, ESPRIT. I had the privilege of knowing Paul Ricard and his co-founder Dan for over 14 years, both professionally and personally. But even with that long-standing connection, this conversation uncovered a ton of insights I had never heard before. Who came up with the name ESPRIT? How did they build one of the most powerful and successful CAM solutions ever? Do they have any regrets about selling the company to Hexagon? This interview happened completely on the fly, up on the 5th floor of McCormick Place. Enjoy the conversation, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hello, Paul. Currently, you are the president of Machining Cloud, a unique service for selecting and working with cutting tools.
Yes.
You are more widely known in the industry as the co-founder of DP Technology and creator of ESPRIT CAM system.
Yep.
So please share with me the story behind DP Technology and ESPRIT.
Okay. My partner and I were working in a small company in Chicago, software company, that was involved in CAD/CAM at the time. We were working there for a couple of years. And
what age?
I was about 23, 24 years old at the time, 24, 25, right around there. And we were friends. We had lots of ideas. We thought that we could take on the world. We were here in the United States where everything was possible. And we had this crazy idea to start a company together. And we were scared, of course, but we went through with the idea. We thought we had nothing to lose. Both of us immigrated to the United States from France at the time. And at the beginning, when we came here, we were supposed to stay for 2 or 3 years and then go back to France, find a job and be done with it. But we thought that we could do something here. And if worst case scenario, things wouldn't work out, we'd just pack our stuff and go back and find a good job, and that would be the end of it. So that's how the idea of starting a business went along.
Any business or specifically CAM business?
Well, at the beginning, we wanted to do something. Obviously, we were engineers. Both of us had built some experience already in the area of machining. At the time, it was not CNC, it was numerical control machine tools. When I was in college, university, actually in France, it's the engineering school, I was passionate about programming. It was the early days of programming. And I would spend my nights and weekends working in Fortran, trying to develop stuff. And so we figured we could combine all of these things together to come up with something. And that's how the idea got started.
Mm-hmm. And what was the year?
So back in those days, I came to the U.S. in 1980. Dan, I think, was there for about a year or so. my partner, Dan. We met when I came over. We quickly became friends. And
In France?
No, in the U.S. Yeah, we actually what the interesting point of this is that we both studied in the same city. He was in one engineering school. I was in another. We should have met because we had a common program for numerical control and running machine tools, because these schools would get together and create a common program for the students. For some reason, we never met there. We met in the United States, and he was there. He was kind of my mentor, so to speak, because he had accumulated a lot of experience, being in the U.S. I looked up to him, and we quickly became friends, as I said. And that's when the idea, a couple of years later, in 1982, the idea of doing something together came along.
You had an idea doing something.
Yeah.
But how from this idea to move, to the CAM software?
Here's what happened. The French company had some software that was in the area of CAD/CAM, NC programming, and things like that. And of course, we figured, let's start with distributing their software. And obviously, we couldn't do it where they were in Chicago. And we had this idea to move to California, because for us, it was the Wild West. It was the frontier for French people. It was the place where we had, it was going to be nice weather. There was also a reason why we wanted to go there. And the reason was that there's these two French guys with a strange accent. We had a little bit of difficulty in the Midwest with people that are a little bit more conservative and big companies. And we felt that it would be difficult to start a company in that environment. As opposed to California, where there was a lot of small shops. It was the Reagan years. And Reagan, back in the days, he invested a lot in defense and aerospace, and a lot of that money went to Southern California, where they have all those companies that fed into the Defense Department. And we thought, okay, this place, we probably can do something there. So that's what we did. We went back to the French company and we said, okay, guys, we have an idea. We can help you out. We're going to start a business. We're going to represent. We're going to sell your software there. We are going to become distributors. Long story short, they said okay, and they said, "You, Paul, you stay behind because you have to make sure that you ensure continuity in the company." And I said, okay, no problem. So Dan went ahead to start the business, and I stayed behind. I trained our replacements. I made sure that everything was okay with the company. And in the meantime, nights and weekends, I would support Dan, who was mostly drumming up business, trying to find companies to sell to. And I was behind the scenes, just doing a little bit of work for support, for preparing demos, technical work, basically.
What's the name of the software?
So the name of the software was Elon. And it was the early days of CAM software, very early days. Software came from France, had been developed in the mid-70s out of the university. A couple of people, one professor and a couple of people then branched off the university and started their own company. And then they had the idea to tackle the American market, which was wide open at the time, and had a lot of possibility because that software was one of the early software that would run on engineering workstations. In other words, not on big mainframes with terminals and having to deal with, at the time, we had modems with very slow speeds and things like that. It's actually a computer on your desk that you could interact with. There was no graphics back then, but you could interact with it, and it was conversational, we used to call it. And it was good. It did the job for people, and obviously people needed to have something to program their machines, and it was useful. It was a good tool.
You were selling software, and how you became developers?
We started with selling Elon, and it was okay, but we ran into a lot of customers that were asking us a lot of questions and wanted to do a lot of different things. And not only did we know the industry really well, but both of us were programmers. Mm-hmm. And we started developing by ourselves something to help a customer here and then to help a customer there. And pretty soon, we looked at what we had, and we had something that actually was very useful for the industry, that would go beyond and had, we're using technology that didn't exist at the time. And we thought that that could be the beginning of something. Mm-hmm. Okay. After that, we needed help, obviously, because we needed to do customer support. We needed to sell. We needed to do all the invoicing and all the administrative work, because we're just the two of us and we didn't have much money, just living paycheck to paycheck, so to speak. So we started hiring an assistant to help us with general work at the office. And then we hired another guy who was a young programmer. He didn't have any degree or anything like this, but he was super smart, and he was and he had learned how to program computers. So we figured, okay, this guy can help us out and develop something. Mm-hmm. And that's how the idea of ESPRIT came about. We did to survive during those days. We did a lot of support. we did a lot of consulting work. We would develop a small routine to help customers, for example, manage their library of G codes. Customers didn't necessarily use ANSI programming or CAM software at the time. Sometimes they would be writing programs in G codes, and so we had developed some routines to help them with that. Mm-hmm. And that helped us to survive and keep going and keep bringing the money in, and at the same time develop the software.
Tell me a story about DP technology.
Yeah. So
why DP technology? Why ESPRIT? So did you have another options?
So it's interesting. When we started the company, obviously we had to select a name. And back in those days, we were working with Hewlett-Packard computers. Hewlett-Packard was also known as HP. And it was Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. HP, so Hewlett-Packard. And we had a representative of HP that we were working with, because back then we would sell the computer and sell the software with it. We'd make money on the computer, which was possible back then, because they'd give us a good discount, and we would package and sell the whole thing to the customer. So we had somebody from HP taking care of us, and the guy, we were just chatting one day around the table, and we're like we don't know how to call our company. And the guy says, I have an idea. Why don't you call it DP technology? And we said, why? And they said, well, because first of all, it's good luck because HP, DP, you know, it's those pioneers. These guys started in a garage up in Silicon Valley, and they became super famous, and then they built this big company and everything else. And when you're small and you're going to go visit customers, and it's just the two of you, everybody's going to ask you, what does DP stand for? And then you answer, you say, well, it means data processing. And we said, okay, well, that's cool. And he say, look, when you're big and you've got lots of people working for you and make millions and millions, then you can say, well, it's actually, we were just kidding. It means Dan and Paul. So that's how, and the name stuck. And we said, okay, well, let's call it DP Technology.
So you had DP Technology, but there was no ESPRIT yet, yeah? So
there was no ESPRIT yet, but ESPRIT came a little bit later. I think we introduced the first version of ESPRIT in 1984. And it was interesting also, the name was how did we come up with the name ESPRIT? Because back then, you know, all the early days of CAM software, everybody was calling their software something CAM, you know, Master CAM, you had Smart CAM, you had all these other names. And we wanted to differentiate ourselves. We wanted to be more upscale. And we didn't like the idea. So in 1984, we actually had a small crew. We had been able to hire a few people. Maybe, I don't know, we were maybe 6, 8 people. There were some programmers. There were some guys that doing support. And there was this lady who was an administrative assistant. She was doing our bookkeeping, a little bit of everything. And we said, okay, guys, we brought everybody in a room and we said, okay, here's the deal. We need to find a name for our software, and we're going to, you guys give your ideas, we're going to vote on it, and whoever wins, we're going to give this person $100. No problem. So everybody's threw their names, you know, and the lady said ESPRIT, and we're like, okay, that's a French name. That's pretty cool. And we asked her, we said, why? And she said, well, because, you know, this is a clothing company and it sounds French and you guys are French. And so it's a pretty cool name. Said, okay. And came to a vote and the name ESPRIT won for some reason. So we said, okay. She got $100 and the name stuck. Now the problem was that in America, nobody knew how to pronounce it. So for years, it was Sprit, ESPRIT, ESPRIT, you know, all kinds of things like this. But we thought, doesn't matter. We don't want to change. This is what it is, and we are going to stick with it.
What is the right pronunciation?
ESPRIT.
ESPRIT.
Yeah.
Okay, without T.
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember the name of the lady?
Yes.
Really?
Her first name was Connie.
You have always had a reliable partner in Dan Frayssinet.
Yeah.
So, do you remember exactly how you two met? I mean, the environment, the place, so how it was.
So it goes back. I'll go back to my early history. So I grew up in France. Mm-hmm. In the city of Lyon. Mm-hmm. And I've always been good in math and physics. And so I naturally gravitated toward engineering. So I graduated from high school, I went into, in France, it's a little bit different than here. If you want to become an engineer, you go through 2 years of prep school after high school with heavy math and physics curriculum. And then after that, you actually do your true engineering school, which is 3 years, so a total of 5 years. And you get the equivalent of a master's degree in engineering. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. Then after that, when I was done, I was like not completely satisfied. I wanted more. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My dad was a sole representative for companies in Germany. My grandparents ran their own business. And I thought that one day maybe I'd do something like this. So I went to a school of commerce, that how they call it in France, for a 1-year specialization in marketing and business. That was right after my engineering school. And after that, I ran into this company that I mentioned earlier. That they hired me as for an internship, mm-hmm. and they liked my work, and they said, okay, we're going to send you to the United States for 2 years as a application engineer, as a support engineer for our customers, and then after that you can come work for us or do whatever you want, and that's it. And that's how it happened. I remember it was quite interesting because I got married in July of that year. And in October of the same year, my wife and I had a one-way ticket from Lyon to Chicago, and or should say Paris to Chicago. And it felt kind of weird because I had never set foot in the United States before. I had traveled a little bit around Europe, but that was it. And for me, Chicago was a big deal because it was the days of Al Capone and gangsters and things like that. So I had a view completely not so good of where I was going, which I discovered the city actually to be quite beautiful and interesting and modern and mm-hmm. and things like that. So anyway, we get there, we settle down, and as I said before, this is how I met Dan Frayssinet. We quickly became friends and worked together for a couple of years. And, as I mentioned...
But do you remember, where did you meet? I mean, in the airport, on the office, so...
No, we made the first time at the office.
The office, okay.
Said, hey, hi, I'm Dan.
Okay.
How you doing? I'm Paul. Let's work together, and... It was a really small office. There was only a few people, so it was easy to make friends.
You've been working together for over 30 years, correct?
Yeah.
And
we have known each other since 1980. So that you're talking about 44 years. Yeah.
Usually partners sometimes fight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Struggle to each other.
Yes.
What about you? I mean, how did you divide roles at DP Technology and manage to maintain strong, relationships, friendship?
Yeah. It's an interesting question because there's several layers to this. Okay, one layer is we have a very different personality, and as a consequence, we work well together. I'm detail oriented. I'm somewhat extroverted. I like to work with people. And Dan, on the other hand, has a very strong personality. He's a great salesman, doesn't deal with details so well, and very smart, very focused, can see around corners, has great strategy, a great strategic mind. Mm-hmm. And the combination of our two skills and personalities makes it so that we can work together really well. We complement each other really well. and that's the reason why we've been so successful all these years. But I tell you what, it was not necessarily easy all the time, and it's not always very easy all the time, because sometimes we argue, we fight, and eventually we find a common ground and we move forward. We're both reasonable people. We're both, I hope, fairly intelligent. That there's the as the famous goose that laid the golden egg, and you don't want to kill it by being stupid. And so we've had our moments that were not so good, but overall it's been a great ride, and we value each other. I personally, I can't speak for Dan. You'd have to ask him, but for me, it's the brothers that I've never had. I'm the only child. I wished all my life that I would have had a brother, and this is what he represents for me.
First time I heard about ESPRIT in 2009, and my first DP technology, the ESPRIT conference, was 2010, I think. Yeah? At that time, ESPRIT was not so powerful in milling, mainly mill turn and wire EDM. But within 5 years, it was like a rocket. So very good milling operations, 3D, 5D, so everything. What happened?
If I may, let me go back to the early days, and then I can develop from there.
Yeah.
Okay. In the early days, the 80s and the 90s, our main focus was wire EDM. And this was an underserved market. Most of our competitors didn't know how to do it. And we decided to go after this market very seriously. And we became very successful at it, not only in the United States, but around the world. This ESPRIT was considered the absolute best wire EDM software for programming wire EDM machines, without any question. That taught us something. Taught us that working closely with the machine tool companies was really important. And back then it was easy because the number of the famous wire EDM brands, there are very few of them. Okay, so you could work with every single one of them: Sodic, Mitsubishi, Agi, Charmy. That was Makino maybe, and a couple of other ones. But it was really easy to really develop all the capabilities for these machines, being very refined and everything. And we carried that knowledge or this understanding of the machine tool industry across back in the early 2000s, when we saw a trend in machine tools where all of a sudden it was not milling and turning anymore. It was a combination of both. Turning machine or lathe started having live tooling, started having 2 turrets, maybe 2 spindle. I mean, it became really complicated. And we felt that we must do the same thing. We must work very closely with the machine tool industry in order to learn how everything works. Okay? And we did. And we moved forward. I don't want to get too much into details, but by the mid-2000, let's say 2005, 2006, right around that time, we had really good turning and mill turn capabilities in the software. And we catered to the top brands like Moriseki, like Okuma, like Mazak, etc. Now, true, our milling capabilities wasn't so good because we had chosen a path that was more towards making parts rather than making cutting molds. And usually when you are in the mold making business, your milling capabilities are going to be really, really good. And if you're more in the parts making business, then you're probably going to emphasize more of either mill turn machines or lathe and turning and things like that. Now, a couple of things happened at that point because we realized that, and truly, as engineers, we wanted to have the best product possible. That was our goal. Okay, and so in the mid 2000s, we're looking for a partner, and we ran into a company called Auten. There's an Italian company that was based out of Florence. And these guys were relatively small. They had a small market, but they were really, really good in mold making, 3-axis milling, et cetera, et cetera. And they were struggling a little bit. And we met the 3 owners, and we talked to them, and we decided to acquire the company. And they were happy with it, and they were okay. And we brought them in. And it took us a few years to understand how to integrate their capabilities into our capabilities. But we did. We figured it out. We gave them a lot of support to create a module that would integrate into ESPRIT, that would not only do 3-axis really well, but also gave them all the freedom to also develop a really good 5-axis capabilities for milling machines, and they did over time, and that's why and obviously it took several years. By the mid 2012, 2015, you could see that ESPRIT had grown tremendously in that area. The other thing that happened, obviously, was in 2008. We also made a very significant. We signed a very significant agreement with Morisiki, and we had to support all their top high-end machines. So not only the mill turn or the turn mill, but also their 5-axis machines and things like that. And that also taught us a lot. And we had to really focus in order to keep them and their customers happy. And that's also part of the reason why. I mean, one doesn't go without the other. Obviously, we had the team, we had the capabilities to develop this that we wouldn't have been able to do on our own without Auten in Florence and Morisiki, that we needed to serve and serve their customers in order to make this happen.
In which countries have you achieved the most success? What do you think?
It's hard to say.
Top 5 countries.
Top 5 countries. I'd say that number 1 would be the United States, obviously, because it's our home market, and as far as all the mid-range to high-end type of machines, we were the most famous there. Okay, over here. I'd say that the top 2 after that. I'd like to say France, even though that's not, the biggest manufacturing market. Mm-hmm. It's probably not even top 5. I mean, you look at manufacturing in the world, at least it's from a CNC machine tool market. It's U.S., Japan, Germany, then maybe you have Italy, maybe you have Korea, places like this. France, obviously, our home country, we were able to go back there, and with our culture, with our understanding of the market, we were able to acquire resellers, to acquire partners. We established an office there. We had a French guy, who ran our European operations, who did a really good job, Philippe. great job. And so overall, I would say that France was also a big market for us. I'd say number 3 would be, I want to say Germany, but to be frank, we did much better in Italy. And partially the reason for this was the fact that we had the Auten company there that already had a pretty nicely established market share. And we capitalized on that. And we enhanced that, and we did extremely well in Italy as well. After that, probably Germany, but I'd have to be totally frank. For the market being as big as it is, we didn't do so well. We had partnership with DMG. That came in later. That came from the relationship with Morisiki. But still, I think we could have done better, and that's me being the person who's always perfectionist. And but true, Germany should count in the top 4 best countries for us. And number 5, I'd have a hard time to say, but perhaps some of the if you look around Europe, there's Japan, which was also a good market for us, but it's a really tough market to really penetrate. I don't know how well we did there. Okay, I would say, but there's a lot of smaller markets in Europe where I think we established ourselves to be very strong, like Switzerland, Austria, the Netherlands, places like this, Western Europe mostly.
Can you recall the most funny or amusing incident and the most challenging moment in your career?
Okay, so unfortunately, I didn't get to live the funniest moments, but I've got the stories, and I probably should recall others, but there's one that comes to mind. It was my partner Dan and the first guy we hired, Chuck. We had a customer down in Los Angeles who wasn't paying his bills, and back in the days, software were protected with what we call the dongle. They're still, in some cases, they still use it. Yeah. So Dan and Chuck decided to go down to the customer and try to make him pay for the software. The customer was, I would like to say, a bit dishonest, because he always kept bringing up small problems in the software that gave him a reason for not paying us at all. Okay? So Dan and Chuck walk into the shop, they start talking to the customer, they start getting into, and then they say, well, show us on the computer how it works and everything. And then as the customer turned around, Dan said, okay, Chuck, you grab the dongle and you run, and we both run out. I get the car, ready to go, and that way we can reprocess the software. And so no problem. So Dan goes out, gets the car running. Chuck is by the computer, and he tries to remove the dongle, but back in those days they were screwed on. And so he's trying, and by this time the customer comes back and starts screaming, closes the door, calls the cops, and Dan is waiting outside, going, what is he doing, So he sees the cop coming, goes back inside, and the cop goes, what's going on? And then this guy is trying to steal my software, and Dan says, well, he hasn't paid, so we have the right to do this. And the cop says, whoa, just slow down, just relax. This is not a criminal thing, you're supposed to go to court for this, don't do if you're doing this, then you're going to be in trouble, So that was probably one of the funniest story of DP technology.
It's funniest and challenging at the same time.
There's others. The most difficult times, well, I'll tell you an interesting story that, and that's when you're an entrepreneur, you probably go through those things at least once in your life. It was back in 1990. We had a recession at the time, and we had moved to a new building. We had hired a bunch of people. A recession hit. Our software is not ready. We're having difficulty selling, and we're bleeding money. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, we're going to go bankrupt. We're going to have to lay off people. But even then, I'm not sure we're going to make it. So we're sweating bullets. You know, I'm not sleeping at night. It's scary time. And I'm like, okay, what should I do? I'm thinking, and I'm like, I'm going to go to the bank and I'm going to try to get some money to get a loan so we can bridge the gap. You know, we'll get rid of some people, and we'll work on the software, make it work so that we can satisfy our customers. They can pay us, and hopefully the recession be over and everything be okay. So back in those days, we were not really, the financial statements were not on the computer. It was all manually done by the accountant. So I pulled out financials from the previous year, which looked really, really good. And I went to the bank, asked for a loan, and they gave me the loan. And I know that if I would have given them the financial statement at that time, no way I would have had the loan. We got the loan. We propped up the company, and 6 months later we were back in business, paid off the loan, and everything was fine.
Good.
So that was scary times, but somehow luck and seizing the opportunity, and then we made it happen somehow.
I know that software development is a hard job. Bugs, issues, problems, customer, calling you every time. How do you manage this process?
In software development, especially when you get to a certain level of maturity, you have to take care of three things, essentially. You need to take care of the very short term, which is correcting bugs, especially the ones that are blocking for a customer. You have to take care of the sort of medium term, so what's going to be in the next version, and you have a horizon of about 1 year or 2 years, sometimes a little bit less, 18 months. And then you have to take care of your vision for the long term, the next thing, and you have to balance those three things, and you never, ever have enough people to do all of that. And this is really the most complicated thing that you have to deal with. And we dealt with it the best we could. At times, we didn't do a very good job, to be frank, okay? We did horrible at times, but, somehow being passionate and having people being very creative, inventive, and caring about the customers probably saved the day. Sometimes you just have a bug and you have to give a workaround and hope the customer accepts it. Okay. Sometimes you get a feature that you don't have and that will take 6 months to a year to develop, and it's important for the customer, and they're going to have to deal with it. And we also early on in the development of ESPRIT, thought, especially when we got to the 2000, 2005, 2010 area, where we thought, okay, how can we enhance the capabilities of ESPRIT without putting a lot of burden on ourselves? And so we opened an API. We gave tools to customers and resellers to develop their own stuff. And so that helped bridge the gap between the lack of functionality in certain areas with the demands from the customer.
Talking about people, do you believe that people is the most valuable asset, and how you motivate people to perform better?
Yeah, definitely the most important asset, I would say, especially in our industry where we're highly specialized. So when I was running DP Technology, I made a point to make sure that people were happy, motivated, engaged, passionate about what they were doing. This was my management style, mostly collaborative, working together as a team, being open and listening, and trying to get people that would do the job, that would go the extra mile, that would help, and by and large we did really well with that, and keeping the people, because they had accumulated so much knowledge and experience that we didn't want to lose that. So that was important. And it's not necessarily done with money. I mean, money, of course, is something, but there's many other things. You have to create an environment in the company where you have people who are enthusiastic about working for that company. And it's funny because in some ways, in the 2010 time, even before that, DP Technology became some sort of a cult in some ways. We had the red shirts, we were screaming at shows. In sometimes, we would do crazy things like magic tricks and things like that. And just people, the employees loved it. They felt they belonged to something that was just not just another company. It was a home. It was something fun to be with, and they felt that they were making a difference.
So about the screaming, so at every show, your team scream ESPRIT, ESPRIT. Why? Does it help to sell better? Or?
There was several things. First of all, we did this to pass the expression to piss off the guys next door who was a competitor, because you'd see a lot of people go to shows and they're dragging their feet and they go, oh, it's another day, I'm so tired, I can't wait to go home and everything else. And I hate this kind of attitude. You go to the show, you're perky, you're ready to go. You're gonna show right attitude with the customers. Otherwise, what's the point? Mm. And so that's part of the reason. But also the reason is to get a sense of belonging, and screaming this early in the morning, was also a way to clear your mind and to get ready and enthusiastic for the day to come. And so we would go, give me an E, give me an S, and so on. And what does it spell? ESPRIT. And then after that, ESPRIT is the right choice. So, it was kind of an interesting thing to do. And it became the culture of the company.
A few years ago, you sold with Dan DP Technology to Hexagon. I'm not asking you were satisfied with the deal, but I'd like to know your opinion on the consequences for the product and the team? I know so many people left company. I mean, so what do you think about it?
It's always a tough question. Selling your baby is always difficult, and I stayed on and helped with the transition for a couple of years. I really wanted to make sure that my baby, and Dan's baby, would pass on and be well taken care of. And we felt when Hexagon acquired us that it was a good decision, and I still think so. Okay, there's no question about it. Okay, it's a good home for ESPRIT. They're taking good care of it, and frankly speaking, because it came in as the #1 CAM software inside the Hexagon organization, it took really an importance for Hexagon that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Mm-hmm. So that I'm very proud of, okay? Because even today, compared to the portfolio of all of the production software that they have, ESPRIT by far is #1 in their portfolio. And it's the most advanced of all the software, because we had worked so hard to get the product to this point. Now your question is, a lot of people have left. It is true. And there's not much you can do. And this is something that I've learned and I've understood over the years, because you not necessarily understand it when it just happens. You want to hang on to your people. You want to make sure that they're all happy and everything else. But this doesn't happen that way. You've got two different cultures, and you have to recognize the fact that they're different. And the bigger company most likely will take over the smaller company's culture. The small company's culture will remain in some ways, but not completely. And some people will be happy with it, and some people not. For every one of the people that have left for one reason or another, I can give you examples of people that were DP Technology employees who have done really, really well inside of Hexagon, who've built beautiful careers. And so it's bittersweet. You know, you've got the good and you've got the not so good. And in the end, I don't regret anything. And I think that the product carries on very strongly with a company that is capable of bringing that product to the market and making it even bigger than before. I have to realize that, you know, Dan and I are in some ways a retirement age, and we couldn't carry on all this time. And what would happen of DP Technology if we decided, like we did, that it was not going to be a family business? Eventually, you need to find a good home for it, and that's what we did.
My last question. What do you think about the future of CAM? Do you believe in AI?
So that's a really tough question. Yes, I believe in AI, but I believe that, and that's going to be controversial, what I'm going to say. But the companies that are currently working on AI for CAM are just scratching the surface. And I don't think that they're doing much better than other CAM companies that are doing it with a more traditional approach currently. You know, and ESPRIT, of course, had what we call KBM, knowledge-based machining, which basically was a sort of AI because it was rules-based. So you could consider rules as being AI in some ways. Yes and no. But, you know, you can do a lot of things with rules. You could say, if this happened, then do that. You know, these are the different cases, etc. And we did a lot of that stuff to automate the work of our customers.